Hi, today in the small shed I'm going to be doing a hack on the Triton router table, and that's coming up next. Now you may remember from the video I did on the Triton TWX7 workbench, if you happen to see that, to my mind it had a sort of a fail unsafe mode, in that if you took the router out, or were working on the router, or taking the router bit out, the procedure is to switch the router off. And as we know with these on-off switches that you get on most devices, like the bandsaws and the actual TWX workbench itself, it's got a system whereby if you unplug the mains, or if the mains goes off while you're working on something, it won't switch back on again. And that's fine, that's brilliant. It's perfectly safe then, so that if you happen to have a power failure, you forget a machine's turned on and it actually turns back on when the power comes on, it could cause you a problem. So let's for a minute just recap on the problem that I had with the Triton router table. Now there's one little nasty that's just caught me out with the router table that it's probably not anything they can do anything about, but it's something that I'm slightly bothered by, if you like. They put in safety features to stop you being able to do certain things, and then when you find they don't actually work quite like you thought they did, it's probably a recipe for disaster. So just to make anybody else aware of it on the machine, you've basically got an on-off switch on the router itself, which is wonderful. You can't turn it on without moving a cover, you can't lift the cutter up without to change the cutter without switching it off, and that locks it. And there is an on-off switch on the end of the table that it plugs into, and that has also got one of these switches that if you have the router running and the power goes off, it won't just start again if the power comes back on. All fine and dandy, that's exactly what you want. But what happens is, if accidentally, as I just did, you switch the router on without thinking, because you haven't yet reset the on-off switch, and I've just done that, and you think, oh yes, I've just forgotten to turn the router on. So you then go round underneath and turn the router on, the thing is off running when you probably weren't quite expecting it to, because you're used to it being an on-off here. So it's just something to be aware of. It's not anything I think anybody can do anything about. I don't think there's a way around it, but it is a problem that you can actually turn the router on when you're assuming it's all switched off and dead, and actually if you happen to have pressed that on-off button, the on button, I mean, when the power's been on but the router's being set up, when you turn it back on it's actually running. So don't turn your back on it. That's all, just a quick problem with it. So I'm going to do a little hack on the bits and pieces that I've got spare with the Triton, and a couple of other bits I've received from China, and it's just very simple, but hopefully it will make it a lot more safe. As it comes, there's a mains 3-pin British standard plug on the European, the British version anyway, that plugs into a socket on the Triton TWX7 workbench itself. So that plugs into the workbench, and then your appliance plugs into that. All I'm doing essentially is putting another feed out of that to a 12-volt supply and putting a warning light on it, so that if there's any power coming through to the tool, even if the tool's switched off, you're at least visually aware of that. So it's fairly simple. What comes with the machine is a spare cable, which is, I take it for a 2-pin European type plug-in socket plug tool. It's something I'm not going to use, I haven't got, so therefore I'm going to reuse that one rather than cut around the one that's perfectly alright. And I've just got a straightforward socket, 3-pin socket to put on the end of it. Plenty of room in there to connect in and take wires out elsewhere. I've got a small LED driver that's basically a 252 12 volt transformer that will be incorporated into that somewhere, somehow, and then that will take a feed out to a warning lamp, so that if the power's on, as I say, there is a big red warning light or something going on. So that's all it is. We'll start off just hacking into the cable itself. So the first thing to do is to try and get into the plug. I want to try and save as much of the cable as I can. And there's not much point in having a multi-tool if you don't get a chance to play with it. So we'll have a go with that and see if we can get it open. Now I suspect that may have invalidated the warranty a bit, but certainly a start. Probably not a huge amount of gain on the cable, but I just wanted to make sure I'd got every bit I could from it. That's it. So that's got me basic 3-core wiring to be able to attach the socket to. Now there's a moulding in the back of the socket that looks like it was probably designed originally to take some sort of an indicator lamp. There's a blanked out moulding piece there. So what I'm going to do is drill that out. It's a 5.5mm hole, and then I can bring the power to the transformer out through that hole. Cable restraint fitted. Pop the top back on it, put the screws in. There's no cable restraint on the back box, but this whole thing is now going to be built into something slightly larger, so that there should never actually be any pull on that section. It's a matter of finding some sort of a housing or box to fit now, and then that will be inside the box, and there'll be a 12 volt output, and then the whole thing will just plug into the saw in the normal way. So that's the first stage anyway, complete. Right, now I've got the box that I needed, I was waiting for. That'll fit the socket onto it with the transformer inside. I've just drilled a hole in the end. It's got to be widened out yet to take the small socket that I've found that'll do to take the LED lights, and now I'm just going to cut out that. I've drilled the corners and we're just about ready to put it all together. Right, so we've now got the socket is secured to the box with a couple of screws that go through the back of the socket itself. Put the lid back on it. Screws in there, they can go in from the back. That makes it reasonably tidy. And then all that's needed now is to connect the 2 wires from the 12 volt supply into the back of the socket that's mounted in the box. I'll probably put a spot of hot melt glue on that just to locate it within the box. Then that'll connect up to the socket that's in the box now mounted, and then that will all bolt together. So that we have a complete unit that will then just plug into the Triton and replace the existing plug and socket, but it gives me that extra 12 volt supply for an LED. Right, now we've lashed the thing up temporarily. I'm only doing it on a temporary basis at the moment because until I know how it works and whether it works even, I'm not really sure where I want things to be. So there's the main box there that we've built with the outlet plug on it for the LED. The wire at the moment is just on a temporary plug, and I've put that up in the corner on another temporary plug-in socket and mounted it on the wall in the corner. Now the whole reason for the lash up is that, like a lot of these things, until you start using them you don't really know whether it's going to be right for you or not. So that's the setup there. Now the principle is that if I accidentally touch the power button, which it's possible to do on the thing, that's what I've got. I've got a warning, visual warning. The router isn't itself switched on, but there's power going to it, so that if I now lean up underneath and turn the switch on for the router, and I'm working with my head underneath the router table, I don't know what's going on top. Turns on, and as I say, that's the point at which it caught me out before, and now with it turned off, the light's off. So that's achieved what I wanted to. It's probably a slightly long-winded way of going about it, but as long as I feel safer with it, that's all that matters really. So I may move the sound visual signal round to in front of the router table itself, but I've got a couple of the LEDs. I can mount them really anywhere I like. It's possible I might even mount it somewhere around the blast gate that goes with it, but that remains to be seen once I start using it. But that's it for the moment. Well, I hope that was of interest. It's not just the TWX7 that this applies to. The idea of having a warning light on an appliance that's running like circular saws and routers, it's probably quite a good idea. With I've also found that whenever you've got your ear protection on, you can't hear what's going on anyway, and if you do happen to forget to switch something off, you can cause yourself some quite severe injury by just not noticing that the thing's spinning because you can't hear it running. So hopefully it's been of use. If it is, please press like and subscribe, share it with your friends, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video. Cheers now, bye.